What's up, life groups? Okay, here's the big idea. The same God that blesses you is the same Father that disciplines you. We've wrapped up this series on Christian atheists, and I think that this might have been the hardest talk of the series. The idea that God cares enough about you to discipline you, it's sweet and it's sour, right? Nobody wants discipline, but we all know that we need it. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 7 says, endure hardship as discipline. We've talked about all these categories of hardships, trials and testings and pruning, but discipline is one of those categories. Sometimes we're going through something that God's allowed to happen or caused to happen to wake us up and show us some blind spots that we have. He's making you more like Jesus. He's helping you become more like his son or his daughter in a way that you probably wouldn't choose for yourself, but we need. He says this, endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legit. Not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we've all had human fathers who disciplined us as we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good in order that we may share in his holiness. That's called sanctification. That's the process of you becoming like Jesus. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. So 3 things about discipline. God's discipline is always timely, number 1. We cannot handle being disciplined every day. I mean, do we need it? Yes, we do. We are not perfect, not even close to it. And in fact, having 3 kids myself, there's some things I see in them where I'm like, man, I need them to grow out of that thing sooner rather than later. And so I introduce discipline to help accelerate their growth. And then there's some things I'm just like, I'll leave it alone. They're going to begin to see that on their own. And, I think about having teenagers, you have to learn some lessons the hard way. And when you do, you're like, you know what? I'm not going to do that again. Sometimes life will teach you those lessons, but sometimes you need a father to discipline you. In your groups, this is what I want you to talk about. What did it look like growing up with a father or mother who disciplined you or didn't discipline you? Do you understand why your parents disciplined you? Did you not have parents who disciplined you? It's kind of a personal question, but kind of go around. I would say be careful falling into the trap of just, some of us forgiving our parents is a real thing. So I don't want you to fall into just how awful your parents were, but really talk about who you were. What was the most effective way your parents ever disciplined you? That's really the question. How did they discipline you, and what really worked for you? Aren't you grateful that you have a father who knows you? He knows you and he knows how to get through you. Not only is God's discipline timely, but it's also effective. And lastly, talk about what appropriate discipline looks like. This week, one of my kids had done something for the 3rd time, and I said, son, at this point I have to discipline you. And it's either going to be this or it's going to be this. And I didn't discipline him because I was angry at him. I disciplined him for his good. God's discipline is appropriate. God's not disciplining you because he's mad at you. This is not who God is. God is not, Exodus 34 says that God is slow to anger and he is compassionate, meaning he's not some stick of dynamite that you do something and the wick is this short and it blows up. He's got a really long wick to his anger. Plus, the cross is so awful. It's so torturous. It's so, oh my gosh. I mean, do you think God needs to punish Jesus on the cross and also punish you as well? No, I mean, that's the reason why the cross is so awful, so that we know that the wrath of God is satisfied completely in Jesus. But God's still a father. And when he sees you do things to people that he loves, it warrants a level of discipline in your life. When he sees things that you're doing that hurt yourself, it warrants a level of discipline from God. And so what does that look like on an appropriate level for you? What is it that you've experienced in your life where you can say, you know what, that was more than a trial, that was actually the discipline of God? So those are your questions. What is it like when your parents disciplined you? What was most effective? And can you put your finger on a time in your life where you go, you know what, that was God correcting me? Remember that discipline is less about punishment and it's more about correction. When was a time that God corrected your path through some discipline? Maybe that story will bring encouragement to somebody else in your group who's going through maybe a similar season.